The Renaissance, Part 2, Copernicus and Kepler. Professor Michael Watwin, Department of Psychology, California State University, Fresno. Our first astronomer in the Renaissance is the Polish astronomer Copernicus. I'm ethnically Polish, so got a little pride point there. Now, Copernicus is known for the heliocentric theory of Earth's orbit. He was one to formalize the notion that the Earth revolves around the sun rather than the sun revolving around the Earth. Here is an early picture by Copernicus's hand showing the Earth as the third planet out and all of the planets revolving around the sun. Now notice, very important thing here. All of the planets are circling the sun in perfect circles. Why? Because God would not create anything imperfect, which includes the planets and their orbits. And one of Plato's most perfect forms of all is the circle. So Copernicus gets the sun in the center of the solar system correct, and he uses logic to figure out, well, they must revolve, all the planets must revolve around the sun in a circle. Now, over time, astronomers are going to find when they're trying to map the movement of the planets, that doesn't quite work. But it will take our next guy, Kepler, to figure that out. Let's talk a little bit more about Copernicus. Now, one of the most important things about Copernicus's findings of the heliocentric view of the solar system is it violates common sense. We can't see our planet revolving around the sun. Even with our astronauts going up in space, we can look at things relatively, and they can take pictures of it, but we still can't see that movement because it's too slow. In fact, what do we talk about? Even every morning with our trained meteorologist on any of our local TV stations, what do they talk about? Sunrise and sunset. And we know the sun does not rise anyplace, nor does it set. Rather, our little ball that we live on is spinning around on its axis, which gives us day and night, right? I hope we don't have any flat earthers listening to this and disagreeing with me. But this violates common sense. It's again a little bit anti-Aristotelian because Aristotle says we can observe nature and we can't observe the movement of the planets. So there are times when our senses just can't tell us how the world, or the universe for that matter, works. The other idea that is of critical importance with Copernicus's heliocentric view of the solar system is it displaces the central role of humans in the universe. We, in modern times, talk about how some people are so narcissistic they think that everything spins around their navel. In ancient days, people believed that the Earth was the center of the universe because it was something that God made, and we were all being watched, by God and the angels and everybody else on our little rock here. But we no longer are at the center of the universe. In fact, if you know your modern astronomy, you know that we're on an insignificant little solar system on the periphery of a galaxy that's on the periphery of the universe. We're really out there, not very central at all. In fact, what the physicists tell us about being in the center of the universe with the massive levels of gravity and black holes and all these other things, kind of think it's better to be where we're at right now. Anyway, that's a little bit too far-fetched from where we're talking about. We're still at the Renaissance, and they don't even know all of this stuff yet. Our next astronomer is Johannes Kepler. Kepler was a student of the famous astronomer Tycho Brahe. We don't have time to get into all of the astronomers, although I think the history of astronomy is a fascinating area of study, especially as you get into ideas of how the world works and the universe works and our place in it and what people thought before that. Well, Kepler comes along, and I remember from my astronomy class as an undergraduate having to memorize these things. I'm not going to make you memorize things in detail here. I just want you to think about these things. Kepler figures out that the planets revolve around the sun in an elliptical orbit. This is probably a little bit exaggerated, but the orbits are not circular. Now, people were just getting used to not being the center of the universe anymore and revolving around the sun. And Kepler comes along and figures out the elliptical orbit paths of the planets. And that freaks a lot of people out because God created everything and the planets aren't perfect. What's going on here? That's kind of scary. Kepler also develops laws of planetary motion that are beyond the scope of this class to talk about. And he uses mathematical deduction and experimental observation of planetary motion to figure out how things are working in our solar system. So what do we get from these two astronomers? We get that we're not the center of everything, and even on the periphery, not so perfect. But it's what is happening in nature. And we're moving forward with a science that talks about exploring how nature works, not how we think nature works or want nature to work. And we'll get there in future episodes of the history of psychology. See you then. This has been a We Have Couches video production. Copyright 2020. Professor Michael Botwin. All rights reserved.